It's Phil coming back at you with another video. Today, I'm back. I'm excited. I'm pumped up. Hopefully, I'm doing more practice and self-care, not letting one thought, one situation, one person take them outside of what they know to be true. And they're building themselves up, doing the next right thing, and taking care of themselves and allowing for themselves to recharge themselves, to charge inside of the exam, to kick it directly in the chest to get the job done. And happy Easter, every single person. And hopefully that you get the time to spend time with people that you care about. And if not, at least you're able to spend time with yourself, doing the next right thing for yourself, and keep building yourself up, doing the next right thing. And I know exactly 34 people winning the exam, kicked it directly in the chest to get the job done, because that's how many people have passed the exam while repping and rocking with the Fill in the Gaps community since my last video. And as I always say, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate every single one of you guys that allows me to be able to do this and to allow me to be a part of your process. In the 34 people that winning the exam are as follows: Christiel L, Amaya W, Shayla F, Relinda T, Kelly D, Joanne J, Donna R, Marcia T, Vandalia M, Jose B, Peyton C, Ricky G, Kendall M, Victoria G, Joe B, Erica L, Mandy C, Olivia M, Katrina H, Brittany W, Leah L, Catherine D, Jazz Maria M, Eliza G, Allie L, Stacy J, Sarah R, Danielle F, Erica G, Sydney S, Lindsay M, Anna Z, Joel M, and Charmaine F. And I'm so excited, man, because so many people on that list were doubting themselves, beating themselves up, and it wasn't their first time going in the exam. They're like, man, Phil, am I even able to go in the exam? Should I quit? Man, am I even supposed to be a social worker? Or man, Phil, I know how this goes. I've tried taking the exam before. I'm not even sure what I'm doing or how I can even get there. And it's so amazing for me to see people start out beating themselves up, going to the shortcuts, first, next, best, most, should, doing all these methods that are not actually going to be helpful for them, but they actually start understanding how to get to the answers, not just being like, all right, it's the answer, so it's the answer, but truly building themselves up to become the next right version of themselves, to go in the exam, kick it directly in the chest to get the job done. And if you pass the exam and we're up and rocking with me as well, and you want me to add your name to the list, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com, because that's the easiest way for you to let me know. But again, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate every single one of you that allows me to be able to do this. And you're like, man, Phil, I want to rep and rock with you as well. I'm not really sure how I'm able to do that. The easiest way to be able to do that are my Sunday study groups that are on Sundays from 7 p.m. Eastern time until they kick us out. They can't kick us out because I'm the host. And those sessions typically 4.5, 5.5, 6 hours long, because I want to make sure that I give you guys as much information as I possibly can, but not to memorize anything, but to be able to recognize and apply it, to go in the exam, kick it directly in the chest to get the job done, and be able to apply the information to practice questions, not practice questions that are super duper easy and that make you feel good, but actually teach you how to do the dang thing. So that way, when you go in the exam, you feel a lot more comfortable doing exactly what you need to be doing. In the next Sunday study groups coming up are as follows: 4-9, going over ethics, so going over the code of ethics, going over subpoena versus court order, when to refer versus when to seek supervision, and not just the black and white thinking of like, man, this is what the ethics is always going to say, but how do you actually parse through an ethical dilemma to identify what is actually in the code of ethics? Because a lot of times people are like, man, this is what the code of ethics says, but it's not actually in the code of ethics. So you want to make sure that you truly understand what's in there, so that way you know the standard that you're being held up against. And in addition to that, going over practice questions related to those. The next session after that is 4.16, going over meds and DSM-5, so going over the medications, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, the ADHD medications, going over the antipsychotic medications, mood stabilizers, and then particular diagnosis related to those, and not any ways to be able to memorize any of the information, but to truly be able to recognize and apply it as you see it on the exam, to go in the exam, kick it directly in the chest to get the job done, and then review and practice questions related to those. The next one after that is 4.23, Freudian theory, as well as the defense mechanisms, so the psychosexual stages of development, psychoanalytic, psychodynamic, and then the defense mechanisms, and then going over practice questions related to those. The next session after that is 4.30. It's going over DSM-5 children, so the children diagnosis, and then practice questions related to those. The next one after that is 5.7, client intervention, so going over the individual client interventions, CBT, DBT, solution focused, task centered, and then behavioral modification, and then going over the family therapies, Bowen's family therapy, structural family therapy, strategic family therapy, and then practice questions related to those. And the next one after that is 514, practice questions. And as I always say, do not expect to come in this session to get every single question correct, because these questions that I construct tend to be more difficult than the ones on the actual exam, more difficult than questions that other people have told you that the exam is actually going to look like, because a lot of times people are like me and Phil, I've seen practice questions before, I'm going to come in this session and destroy it. And then what happens is people come into the session, they get more questions incorrect than they wanted to, and then they start beating themselves up, doubting themselves, and say, should I reschedule my exam? Should I not reschedule the exam? But again, these questions are going to be more difficult than the ones in the actual exam, because I would rather have you go through a difficult situation outside of the exam versus go inside of the exam comfortable like me, and this is going to be a breeze, and then get your heart ripped out of your chest and then fail the exam. And in this session, we're going to be going over the tips that I find most helpful for people to keep in mind as they're preparing for the exam, the different types of questions that you can see on the exam, the 6-step process that I recommend every single person utilize as they're breaking down questions, and then going over 15 practice questions. And if you want to attend any of these sessions, you can either, one, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com, or click the link down below in the description, which is the view more under the title, which will take you to my calendar. And these are paid sessions, and you'll get the recording of the session after it. So if you're not able to attend live, it's 100% possible to still rep and rock with me. In addition to that, I do still offer individual tutoring sessions. So if you want to work with me individually on either how to break down questions, break down certain content areas, you're not sure where to turn, and what you need to do to help you go in the exam after you failed the exam, or if it's your first time, etc. And if you want any information related to that, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com, or click the link down below in the description, hit the view more under the title, and it'll send you to my calendar. That'll show you the Sunday study groups, the individual tutoring, the one-day course, as well as free sessions when they come up, as well as the next one-day course, which has been the most successful thing that I've ever done. And a lot of times when people attend the one-day course, they're like, holy smokes, this is a lot of information. It's going to allow for me to be able to better conceptualize things and not go with the buzzwords, not jumping around, not having black and white thinking, but truly be fully prepared to go in the exam, because the one-day course packs the most amount of information together, but also gives you difficult practice questions to not just make you feel good about yourself, but truly understand how to break down the questions. If one detail is different, how do I get to this other detail, etc. So the next one-day course is going to be on 4/29, and it's going to be from 11 a.m. Eastern time until they kick us out. They can't kick us out. I'm the host, and the length of time for this session truly is variable, because I've had sessions that are 12 hours, 13, 14 hours long, and the session is going to be recorded. So if you're not able to attend the entire session, or if you're not able to attend all of the session or any pieces of the session, so when you register, it is going to add your name to the email list to receive the recording that you can review at your own leisure. The one-day course is going to cover the tips that I found most helpful for people to keep in mind, the most common reasons why people fail the exam, because what better way to learn what not to do than from people that have already done those things. There's going to be a mixture of topics: subpoena versus court order, operant conditioning. We'll be going over referral versus supervision. We'll be going over personality disorders, bipolar 1 versus bipolar 2 disorders, the schizophrenia spectrum, the medications, the acronym, the 6-step process, and then tying it all together with 25 practice questions. And again, the one-day course has been the most successful thing that I've ever done, because it gives you, one, the most amount of time with me, 2, the most amount of information that I can possibly give to you, and 3, gives you difficult practice questions to ensure that you are on the right track to go in the exam, kick it directly in the chest to get the job done. If you want any information related to that, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com, or click the link down below in the description, which is the view more under the title. If your exam is prior to 4/29 and you want a previously recorded one-day course, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com, and I will give you information on how to purchase that. And as I always say, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate every single one of you guys that are repping and rocking with me in the Sunday study groups, the individual tutoring sessions, as well as the one-day courses. And again, for those that do not know, Audible's continue to partner with me on my YouTube videos and my podcast. So if you want to support me as well as support them, go to my Audible affiliate link at www.audibletrial.com/fill-in-the-gaps. Sign up for the 30-day free trial. It gives you a free book. And Audible is the easiest way that you can support me, and it costs you absolutely nothing. And I appreciate every single person that has already done that. And if you're wondering what Audible is an easy way to get information on the go. So if you're busy just like me and you still want to become the best possible version of yourself, it's 100% possible. Or if you learn based on hearing just like myself, and you don't want to sit down and be able to pet the pages of a book, Audible is an easy way to be able to do that. So again, if you want to support me as well as support them, go to my Audible affiliate trial at www.audibletrial.com audibletrial.com/fill-in-the-gaps. Sign up for the 30-day free trial, get yourself a free book. And when you sign up for the 30-day free trial and get yourself a free book, it helps me out a lot. And if you're like me and Phil, I want to sign up for Audible, I want to get a free book. What are some books that you'd recommend? There are a couple of books that I would recommend. The Alchemist, The Archer, UOU, and Outliers. Each of those books have lessons that have helped me both personally as well as professionally to become the best possible version of myself. So again, I appreciate every single person that has signed up for the Audible free trial. And again, if you haven't already, hit the like button down below, which is the thumbs up button next to the title. Helps me as well as allows for amazing social workers just like you to find my videos as well. And if you haven't, please drop a comment down below about something that is positive that's going on in your life, something that you're looking forward to, something that you've accomplished, etc. Because I don't know about anyone else, but I read every single comment and I will try to reply to them as fast as I possibly can, because I never want somebody to reach out and not get a response directly from me. In addition to that, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below and the bell notification next to it, because it sends you an email every single time that I upload a video similar to this. And if you haven't already, check out my podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify at Fill in the Gaps. And from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate every single one of you guys that it allows me to be able to do this. And again, it is amazing how many people have gone on the exam, kicked it directly in the chest to get the job done while repping and rocking with the Fill in the Gaps community. And how many people are finding benefit from this, because I never imagined when I first started doing this that there would be as many people repping and rocking with me, as well as just become the best possible versions of themselves. And the rest of this video is going to just be some thoughts that I have for you guys, as well as me interacting with people that have failed the exam and are looking for advice, as well as people that win the exam, kicked it directly in the chest to get the job done. So let's shift gears into this. Thought I would show you guys a little bit my personality. And again, happy Easter every single person. Hopefully you guys have some time with your family. But let's get into this. And a couple of thoughts that I've been having, because I've been interacting with a lot of people that have failed the exam, or there's a lot of people that are stressed that they're not going to be able to pass the exam, or their job's telling them like, man, you got to pass this exam or you're going to lose your job, or man, you're not really going to be able to succeed if you aren't able to pass this exam, and all these different things. And whenever I think of those things, it always reminds me that it's not what you do or what you've experienced or where you're coming from or who is in your life. It's how you respond to the things that are coming into your life. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times we are the product of the questions that we ask, the answers that we receive, the feedback that we receive, as well as the experiences that we have. So if you're in an environment where a lot of times people are doubting you, they're trying to provide you guidance on things that they don't really have any idea what they're kind of talking about, or they have an idea of what they're talking about, but they're speaking directly from their experience and trying to tell you what you should be doing without considering any of the facts about your situation or even identifying what you want to do, you get lost in the mix. And as people are telling me this, I always try to think about what is the underlying message from this, or why is this information being brought to me? And what came to me is the word capable. Because if you think about the word capable, it's what somebody is able to do based on what they've been through and what they know to be true. However, when you separate the word out, you have cap and able. So you never know what you're capable of until you take off the cap of what you think that you're able to do. Because a lot of times what happens to people is they get in environments and they get in situations where they start telling themselves what they think they're able to do. And they get feedback from other people that are like, man, you should be able to do this, or you should be able to do that, or you should be able to do this, or man, just do this, or just do that, or just, and again, it's not from a lot of times from a bad place. However, when you start absorbing all those things into your mind and within your spirit, you start taking on all of the responsibility of what they're telling you and taking it on as if it is already true. So if somebody's like, man, you need to be scared about going to the exam, or man, you already failed the exam, you really think that you're going to be able to do it this time, or man, you're not doing this other program, or man, you're not doing first, next, best, most, or man, you're not going with the buzzwords or like feeling, gather information, CPS, or man, you're not doing this, or man, are you studying enough, or man, you doing that, or man, you have ADHD, or man, you have depression or PTSD, or man, you have this, or man, you have that, or man, you've never begun at text taking, or man, you're not good at this. But when people are saying those things, what they're trying to do is protect you from something that they are unable to protect you from. So they're trying to provide you guidance in a way that they think that they can influence you, but they don't realize what they're doing is actually tearing you down and ripping your ability to be able to do anything outside of your control. And again, if you look at the word capable, it's an upper limit exposed on an activity. And that's what I was saying. Capability is what is you think you're going to be able to do. So if I'm like, all right, I'm not going to be able to do this video, I'm going to have doubts throughout the entire thing. Or, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pass the test. Well, anytime that I'm seeing something that I'm not doing correctly, or if I'm not getting as many right that I should be, I'm going to start doubting and putting a limit on what I think I'm able to do. Or like, you know what? I'm not able to pass this test. But how do you know? Literally, how do you know if you're able to pass the test or not? And people are like, man, Phil, I failed the exam before. So that's how I know if I'm able to pass the exam. Well, you've had an experience with examining 170 questions, and you had that exam as a basis. However, the next exam that you are going to get, it's going to be totally different. And that's where if you're like, well, I know I'm going to fail the exam because I've already failed the exam before. You failed that version of the exam, but every single time that you touch foot inside of the exam, it's your first time taking the exam because you've never seen that version of the exam before. So when you start viewing things from that situation, you are going to unlock and say, well, I failed before, but it doesn't mean I'm a failure. I am a social worker still, and I can do anything as long as I can continue trying. And again, when you start telling yourself that you're not able to do something, you're going to be partly correct because you're going to start trying to do things and influence things that are going to convince you that you're not doing things correct. Or you're going to give up what you think and start doing what somebody else tells you that you should be doing, whether you think it's good or not, whether you should be doing that or not, because you're going to say, you know what, I probably can't do it, so I got to listen to this other person. And that's where a lot of times people connect to me and like, you know what, Phil, I'm doing this method, I'm doing that method, I'm only reading the last sentence, or man, I'm looking for this, or man, safety question, safety answer, man, I'm going to use this acronym, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And okay, you can try those things. You literally can try them. There ain't no shame in trying. However, if you're not getting the results that you want to get, but you're doing a method that you know is not helpful for you, let it go. Literally, let it go. Like, there's no point in trying to do something over and over and over and over and over and not getting there because the way that you're trying to get there is not the way you should be going. And that's where results are not the most important thing as you're preparing for the exam. Because again, people are like, man, get 75% on our exams, or reschedule, or man, you need to get 80%, 90%, 100%, or like, man, are you even studying enough? But the problem with that analysis is, if you're not getting anything out of the studying that you're doing, and if you're trying to get scores on the exams, and you're not even thinking about the question, you're just half reading, going with this, going with that, doing this, doing that, and juggling all these things, but you're never truly understanding how the heck you're getting there, it's as good as you don't know the information at all. Because again, it's not what you do outside of the exam that's going to dictate whether you pass or fail the exam. It's what you do when you're inside of the exam, what strategies and techniques, what is your comfortability, and what do you need to do in order to make this situation as likely of a positive result as you possibly can. But way too many times, people get so comfortable of like, you know what, I need to shoot for that score. Or man, this program tells me I need to go with first, next best, most should. Man, this other program says CPS, APS, feelings, gather information, only read the last sentence, do this random method, or man, do this over here. And it sounds good, but let me tell you, not everything that sounds good is actually good. Not everything that's sweet is actually sweet. Sometimes what that's doing is stripping you of your identity and telling you what you should be doing without even considering what's going on in the circumstances of the question. So that's what I'm telling you is don't come into this situation with your mind made up. Because if your mind's made up, your mind's going to create facts that are going to prevent you from seeing the actual facts of the situation. So if you're getting questions wrong, don't throw your hands up in defeat being like, you know what, it's over, I suck. Your first question should be, why is this question this answer? And if it's this answer, how is my answer incorrect? In addition to that, what did I miss in the question? What did I miss when I was supposed to be doing all these different things? And if you can't answer those questions, you need to find how you can get those answers. Because it's not whether you get a question right or wrong, it's how you got to that question and how you got to the answer and what you saw in the question and how you got there. Because if you find yourself being like, well, I'm just going with it because it says feelings, but you didn't even consider the details on the question, why are you even reading the question anyway? If you're only going to stay in the answers. So that's what I'm telling you. Take the cap off of what you think you're able to do. Because nobody knows what they're able to do until their back is against the wall and they have to do it. You never know what you're capable of doing until you're in that situation and doing the next right thing for yourself. Because it's normal to have anxiety. It's normal to be anxious about something. But what takes you outside of what you know to be true is when you start compromising what you know to be true for what somebody else has told you to do. Because way too many times I'm working with people and they're like, man, Phil, I think it's this answer, but they say this over here. Or man, Phil, I think it's this, but this person once told me back in the day. It's like, it's now your day. It's now your insight. It's now your situation. It's now your answer. So it doesn't matter what they say anymore. It matters, how did you get here? Because it doesn't matter if you don't understand how you even got here. And what I mean by that is, way too many times people are like, man, Phil, I don't know how to explain this answer to you. It's just this because it is. What are you talking about? Because if you don't have any idea how you went from this to this to this, we have a problem. Because in the field, when you're working with a client, you have to understand and be able to justify why you're doing what you're doing. And a lot of times people are like, man, Phil, I'm doing this because I think it's what the client needs. But did we even consider the client? Do we even consider the question? Do we even consider the situation? And if the answer is no, take yourself outside of the rescue mode. You're not a superhero. You're not supposed to be saving anyone. They don't want to be saved. Don't save them. So don't jump like a cat that got squirted with water into action and be like, you know what? I'm here to rescue. But a lot of times people don't want to hear that because they're like, well, this is contradictory to what everyone else has told me to do because first, next, best, and most are my savior. Or man, these particular words are going to protect me in the exam. Go and try it. Go and try it. But let me tell you this. When you're inside of the exam, you're going to see those answers. But when you come out and get that sheet that says that you're not going to be successful, it's going to be way harder for you to let it go. But what I'm telling you is that you're able to do anything that you want to do, but the problem is people are expecting way too much out of themselves when they're not considering the characteristics that they're bringing in. Because a lot of times people are still in that mode of that collegiate mode of like, man, I need to get that 4.0, or man, I need to know everything, or man, I need to be doing this, I need to be doing that. But the problem is the exam doesn't care if you got a 4.0. The exam doesn't care if you got honors. The exam doesn't care about all these other things. The exam cares of whether you can come into this situation and understand how you got to every answer that you chose. Then are you able to systematically think about 170 clients in front of you without varying with what you want to personally do for the person without actually considering the client? But a lot of times people are like, man, Phil, I don't think I'm able to do this because of the feedback of other people. And I feel you. Because remember, a lot of what we are doing as humans and who we are, the questions that we ask, the feedback that we're given, the experiences that we have. So if you're like, you know what, I'm not really okay with asking these questions because I don't want to get the answer, or every time I've asked a question, somebody's belittled me, twisted my arm, told me that I should just know the answer or assume that I should know the answer, and I'm afraid to ask questions. Okay, well, the next one is the guidance you've been given. So if you've been given guidance, you have to make sure the person that's giving you the guidance is actually guiding you to a place and putting you into a space that you actually know that you're able to do what you're supposed to be able to do at that given moment. But if you're in a position where you're like, you know what, I got a backpack full of answers, I got everything handled, I'm A-okay, I'm golden, I'm in, and then you go in the exam and you're unsuccessful, but you're like, you know what, must be me, not the strategies and techniques that I use. Well, again, it could be a possibility, but it's not all the possibility in the equation. So if you're getting feedback from somebody else, you need to make sure that you actually understand that what they're telling you is true or not. Because not every piece of information somebody gives you should you just blindly go with and be like, you know what, I'm just going to go with it because of what they told me to do. And it doesn't matter what they told you to do if it's not the truth or you don't understand why they told you the things that they're telling you at that given moment. So again, if you're in that position where you're like, man, I have too many sources of information, I got this, and this, weed the garden. Because less is more when it comes to the exam. I don't need you using this and this and this and this and this. I need you to trust what you know to be true. I need you to do what you think is right, not what this person told you to do, not what this person over here is saying, but what do you actually think at that given moment? Because if you're not able to go in the exam and do what you think is right, somebody else is taking the exam for you. And again, if you're in that environment where you're like, man, I don't have a lot of people that are telling me the right things, or man, I don't even know where to turn, you got to really trust and know that what you know to be true is likely going to be the truth. So if you feel like something's not working, it's probably not going to work. But if you're stopping yourself prior to practicing and understanding that something is going to work or not. You got to lean into that discomfort and know that not every time that a situation is uncomfortable is it a time where you should run away. But a lot of times people will run away from situations or from a given experience because it's not what they thought it would feel like. It's not what they thought it would be like. And I get emails all the time where they're like, man, Phil, I was so scared in the exam. I thought I failed the exam. I wasn't even sure of what I was doing, but I could hear your voice saying like, man, don't go with the buzzwords, man. Do not second guess. Do not add to the question. Like, man, just trust yourself. Keep rolling. Keep going. And then when they went out of the exam and got the sheet, they like broke down and was like, man, I didn't even think this was going to be possible for me. But I knew that what you were telling me was the truth because I could replicate it even outside of the sessions that we were doing. I could understand why this was the truth versus just robotically going with, all right, it's always safety first, or man, always rule out this, or always rule out that, or man, first, next, best, and most, you need to do that, all these different things. But all those things are shortcuts, and shortcuts are going to cut you short. But if you're in that mode where you're like, man, I don't trust a lot of people, or man, I don't even think I can listen to other people, you got to really question that and say, why is that the truth? Because I was talking to somebody today that's like, man, Phil, I'm going through so much tragedy, or man, I have so much things going on in my life that I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know what I need to do in order to get past this. And I kept reiterating, you are going through what you are going through right now to get you to where you're supposed to go in the future. Because an experience is going to take you further. Because in order to have experience, you must experience something at some capacity. But in the moment, you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Because a lot of times people are neglecting themselves, they're overworking, they're overstudying, they're beating themselves up, tearing themselves down without actually considering what impact does this have on me? And you may be supporting a bunch of people, but you got to ask, at what cost is this taking me outside of what I know to be true? Because if you're doing something and it's what you want to be doing, you got to make sure that it's making you feel fulfilled or feeling some type of need at that given moment. So you're going through what you're going through right now to get to where you want to go, but don't let what you're going through or what you've been through take you outside of this present moment. Because if you're going through a situation with your mind made up of like, you know what, this is what I'm capable of doing, or this is the result I'm always going to get, that's not the truth. Because you're not almighty and powerful that can dictate the future. And if you can tell the future, then you need to be telling me information that could tell me how to save my own life. No, I'm just kidding. But at the end of the day, you're not a fortune teller. And you need to remind yourself that if you are coming from an environment and it was a protective factor to demean yourself, tear yourself down, and predict things that are going to be negative in the future, you got to put yourself on punishment and say, I'm not in that situation anymore. I need to upgrade the way that I'm defending what I know to be true. Because if you come from that situation of like, man, Phil, it's always been easy for me to tear myself down so nobody else around me could tear me down or challenge me or say anything about me or call me outside of my name. And I feel you. But at the end of the day, if you're still doing that, even though nobody's saying anything, what is the purpose for that behavior? What are you accomplishing? Anytime that you do something that's not perfect, you're flipping the table. You're ready to give up and say, like, you know what? I'm out. It's done for me. I'm out of this place. But my encouragement is when you are making a mistake that you think is going to be catastrophic, give yourself the feedback and give yourself the encouragement that you give somebody you care about, or give yourself the encouragement and feedback that you needed back then to build yourself up and to truly become who you're supposed to be. Because a lot of times people are just wearing a mask of what they think other people are demanding out of them. But at the end of the day, we are more harsher critics on ourselves than anyone could ever be. So that's what I'm telling you is if you've been through something, or if you don't think that what you're doing is correct, sit down and reflect and say, what is missing? Because a lot of times people don't have the ability to understand what they're doing right. A lot of times they could list everything they're doing wrong and create an entire memoir on all of their mistakes in their life, but they're not able to identify what they missed and take it into the future and say, these are the things that I actually did correct. These are the things that I'm doing proficient. These are the things that I'm amazing at and I'm gifted and talented at that nobody else is gifted and talented at. So that's what I'm saying is anything that you're going through, identify the meaning, but never put that cap on what you think is possible. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but there are people, even myself included, when I enrolled in school that I didn't think that I was going to be able to get through school. Or I didn't think that, man, I'm going to be able to become a social worker. I mean, I'm not going to get accepted to be in the master's program. And when I got accepted, it's like, you know what? I'm probably not going to be as smart as everyone else in this class. Or man, I'm not going to be able to make an impact like all these other people are. And I'm working with clients. It's like, yep, probably going to make a mistake. Clients are going to hate me. No one's going to even think that what I'm doing is right. However, if I would have listened to all those things, I would not be here right now. And that's what I'm telling you is it does not matter what the negative thoughts are telling you in your mind. It's what you are doing in reaction to those negative thoughts. It's what you're doing in reaction to the feedback that you're getting from other people. It's what you're doing with what you've been given at this given moment. And if you're doing the best that you can with what you have and know, you cannot wish and hope that you can be somewhere that you're not able to get to at this given moment. And it doesn't mean that you can never get there, but don't be looking at somebody else's highlight reel and being like, you know what, I should be where they're at right now. Or man, I'm not doing it the first time or the second time. Or man, is this going to be possible for me? Because again, you had to go through what you went through in the past in order to get to where you want to go through today, but you have to continue going and growing and becoming who you're supposed to be. Because if you're willing to just throw your hands up in the air before you get to where you're supposed to be, you're never going to truly get there. And that's what I'm telling you is every time that you're going through something, you shouldn't be asking, why is this happening to me? You should be asking, what is the lesson and blessing that I can take from this to take me into the next level and get me to that next moment that I deserve to be in? So it's not what you do that makes you who you are. It's who you are while doing it. Continue forming yourself to become the best possible version of yourself, but do not think that where you're at today is who you're always going to be. Because you're always learning, you're always growing, you're always becoming more at what you did not think that you were going to be able to do. But it's only once you look back and say, man, where was I in the past? Or man, who was I back then? Do you start realizing how much you've grown today, how much more you know, how much in tune you are to yourself. But if you're not trying to look at where you come from, or if you're not trying to identify what's a privilege for you, or if you're not trying to identify what is needed in the future, you really need to ask yourself, why am I so uncomfortable with thinking that I'm going to be successful? Or why am I so uncomfortable to trust that somebody else is going to be looking out for me and have my best interest at heart versus trying to degrade me, tear me down, and rip everything that I have from me? So that's what I'm telling you is do not put a cap on what you're able to do, because you have to go through the unsuccessful moments or the incorrect moments or the mistakes in order for them to take you into the spaces and places that you would have never been able to get into if you didn't have the experience that you're getting today. So remind yourself that you are the best possible version of yourself today, and as long as you continue looking at ways to grow and become more who you want to be in the future, that you've never truly failed at anything. You found an important lesson and carried on to where you were supposed to be. But in addition to that, if you are going through something difficult and tough, be your own support first. Be your own supporter. Be your own cheerleader first and call your name before anyone else has to call your name. Because if you are building yourself up and you're encouraging yourself and becoming who you want to be in the future, regardless of what anyone else says, you're already going to have a strong base in saying, this is who I am and what I do. This is what I know to be true. But if you're in that mode where you're like, man, I need to be having everybody else tell me what that I'm doing is right, or man, I need to be having everybody support me, I'm going to spit it to you frank. Not everybody's going to be repping and rocking with you. Some people are going to be repping and rocking with you to get something from you and never try to pour back into you. So that's what I'm telling you is you want to trust the right people, but understanding that you need to go through what you're going through right now to become who you're supposed to be in the future. So if you identify an upper limit, blow through that joint. If you have an upper limit, rip it off and go to that next level. It may be scary. It may not be something that you think that you can do, but you got to ask yourself, why don't I think that I'm supposed to be able to do this? Or why don't I think that I have what it takes to be here? Because I'm not the first person that's ever done it, but I will be the best possible version of myself to be able to do it. I may not be a licensed social worker yet, but I will get there. I may not have that job that I want yet, but I will get there. I may not know this topic like I want to, but I will get there. I may not have passed the exam yet, but I will get there. I may not have been in this situation yet, but I will get there, because as long as you have a heartbeat in your chest, you can beat the day and become the best that you're supposed to be today. And not let one thought, one situation, one person, or anything take you outside of what you know to be true. And even yourself, because a lot of us will tell ourselves that we're not able to do something, or what we're doing is not important, because we don't want the scrutiny or the criticism or the potential negative view from anyone else. But at the end of the day, it's not the negative people that are going to be saying the most important thing. It's the people that are repping and rocking with you, and that are looking for you to give them something that they need at that given moment. Because you may say something or do something or show something to somebody that blows their mind, but for you it's just something normal. But for you it's something natural. So you have to make sure that what you're doing is taking you to where you want to go, but you need to make sure that you're representing who you are at every given moment that you're supposed to be doing it. Because it's not what people say about you, it's what you're doing and who you're becoming while you're doing those things. Because it's not the most successful people that are going to continue doing those things. It's the people that have failed the most and have learned the most and have grown the most when given an opportunity or situation are going to be more prepared, because you don't have to get ready if you stay ready. But if you've been convincing yourself that you're not the right person, ask yourself, if not me, who? If not now, when? Because the only moment that I have control of today is right now, but I cannot stop myself from getting to where I want to go because of who I think that I am, because I don't care what I say about myself. I understand who I am, but I cannot say anything negative about myself, because if I'm going to say something negative, I also have to entertain the positive things that I do, or the positive attributes and characteristics that I have. And if I'm not willing to entertain both sides, then I'm not willing to entertain any of the sides, because I cannot let negativity make my entire identity void of any positive things. Because unless you're somebody that has never done anything, or has never amazed anyone, or has never done any skillful thing ever, which is no one on the planet, because everybody has uniquely gifted and talented things about them, should never be able to say anything negative without having that positive reframe. And if you're in that mode of butt kicking, or if that mode of comparing yourself to someone else, ask yourself, why am I not willing to look at myself like I'm willing to look at other people and give them credit, but I'm not willing to give credit to myself? And a lot of times it's because if you stoke other people up, or if you give them credit for what they're doing, you're hoping they'll say something positive to you, or they'll say something good about you. But if it's not ever been the case, you can't prove something to somebody that's not trying to identify or recognize who you are and what you bring to your any given situation. So that's what I'm telling you. Never, ever, 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 ever put a cap on what you think that you're able to do. If you think it's not possible, ask yourself, what is needed in order for me to believe that this is possible? What is the exposure point that I need to get into? Who do I need to speak to? What do I need at this given moment? Because at this moment, I may have convinced myself it's not possible, but it's never impossible as long as I'm willing to continue doing the next right thing, continue doing the reps, continue grinding, continue doing everything that I possibly can. And sometimes it's not putting a lot of effort in. It's reflecting and identifying what effort I put in and giving myself credit and affirmation that I'm not receiving it from any other place or any other space that I've been into or occupied. But again, it's not what you do that makes you who you are. It's who you are while doing it. So again, if you're in that mode of like, man, Phil, I don't think I can pass the exam, or man, I don't think this is going to be possible for me, or man, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing, remind yourself that you're only speaking from the perspective that you have right now up to this point, but you don't have a crystal ball to dictate who you're going to become in the future. So you have to remind yourself that better days are to come, but in order for you to have better days in the future, you must make every day that you have right now the best they can be, and improve every single day, and keep striving and keep going and keep becoming who you're supposed to be. Because a lot of times it's not what you are lacking, it's what you already possess that you don't value and are not using that because of what they tell you to do outside of what you know to be true. So that's what I'm telling you. Keep going. Keep becoming everything that you possibly can be. And hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that helped at least one person. And if you're at this far in the video, I know you're repping and rocking with me heavy. And to give you a heads up, the next free study group is likely to be on next Saturday, the 15th. So again, if you want the information for that and sign up before anyone else knows, because you rep and rock with me heavy, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com. From the bottom of my heart, appreciate every single one of you guys. Take care, be safe. Again, happy Easter. Surround yourself with people that are going to build you up, not tear you down, not demean you, not make you justify who you are, but that are going to celebrate you, not just tolerate you. Celebrate, truly embrace who you are and say, man, I'm so glad that I have you in my life. Man, I'm so glad that I met you. Or man, you are so X, Y, and Z that it blows my mind. And if somebody tells you something like that, don't just shake it off like you normally would. Truly sit down with it and say, I may not believe this, but I know that I've achieved this because of somebody recognizing it inside of me before I even recognize it in myself. And it must be a message to tell me that I'm going to be there someday. So that's what I'm telling you. Continue building yourself up. Continue doing the next right thing. From the bottom of my heart, I appreciate every single one of you guys. I love you. Take care. Be safe. And if you're getting ready to go on the exam, tear it apart. Destroy it. Rip its heart out and become who you're supposed to be. Hope to see you in individual tutoring. Hope to see you in the Sunday study groups. Hope to see you in the one-day course and at any capacity. Again, it's amazing for me how many of you rep and rock with me, how many of you find this stuff that I say helpful, and how many of you have gone on the exam, kicked it direct on the chest to get the job done. The rest of this video is people who have failed the exam, somebody who went in the exam, kicked it directly in the chest to get the job done, identifying whether you should flag or leave questions blank, etc. And again, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate every single one of you guys. Take care, be safe. If you need anything, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com. I love every single one of you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm getting out of here in peace out, guys. But that's one of my biggest things that always gets me so frustrated is when somebody says that somebody told them that they can't do it. Because there's way too many points in my life where somebody was like, man, I don't think you could do that. Man, I don't think if you wear a t-shirt and backwards hat that people are going to listen to you. I don't think you could. And I was like, at one point in time, I believed it. I believed that everything that people told me was my fate. But it was once I took control of the messages I let into my situation, did I start actually getting into the situations I deserve to be in. And I used to always wonder, why am I not able to do this? Or what is holding me back? Nothing's holding you back. You just have to water and tend and mend to the little things, because those little things are going to build up and going to create situations that you otherwise can't even see. Like when I first started putting out YouTube videos, I had no idea that anyone would ever listen to it. And the evidence is my first YouTube videos were uploaded right after I passed my exam. And it was like 8 to 9 months before I uploaded another one, because I didn't think it was going to help. Now it's like, holy crap, people are still listening, people are still watching, and people are still enjoying. But if I would have listened to all the negative feedback that I got at the beginning, we wouldn't even be here. So making sure that you're tending and mending to yourself and letting go of the situations, people's, or thoughts that are not actually getting you to the next level or to where you actually think you need to go. Because you guys are all worth it. You guys can do this, and don't let one thought, one situation, one person, one exam, or anything in your life stop you from where you need to be, because you're capable and willing. And if it's where you're supposed to be, you are going to get aligned with the situations, opportunities, people, and communities to help get you there. So keep going. We'll take my test on March 31st. Took the ASWB prep test and failed by 2 points. I second guessed myself and changed some answers that were correct. Any tips?
Hello, Phil. So this will be my first time taking the exam. I have a few more days to go. So I took the prep test, and I failed by 2 points. When I reviewed back, I realized that most of the answers I got wrong was the first, next questions. And I had 20 minutes or so left. So I decided to start from one and then just review to make sure that maybe I wasn't rushing or anything of that sort. So I started, changing some of the answers. So when I reviewed, I realized that those answers I changed, I actually got them correct. And another thing I noticed is out of the 20, about 10 of them, I had them correct, but they were not counted in addition to my score. So I failed the exam. So I don't know if I'm ready or not. Kind of, a little bit nervous about Wednesday coming up.
So yeah, my biggest thing is you have to disconnect the result of the practice exam from the result of your real exam.
Okay.
And it's non-traditional, so bear with me, but I only tell people to take the practice exam for 2 reasons. And one of them, or both of them, have nothing to do with the result of the actual practice exam. And I know that may be shocking because a lot of times people are like, you should be getting X amount of score. But the first reason that I tell people to take the practice exam is to identify, does your particular process work? Like, are the things that you think are going to be applicable during the exam, how do they feel executing them? Do they efficiently work for you? And can you stay consistent for the 4 hours? And the second reason is, can you sit still and stay focused for 4 hours? And if not, identifying specifically what you need to do. So if we were to tie, it's more specifically the first reason than why I would tell people to take the test. It worked. The first reason of why I recommend people to take the test in your situation is, if I follow and trust my process, I will pass. If I go rogue, change answers, second guess myself, get myself riled up, I will fail. So your result is a fail, but it's actually a success because it gives you the strategies and techniques that you need to do in order to stop yourself from causing it during the real exam. Because I could bet, I'm going to bet $1 million. I don't have $1 million, but if I had $1 million, I will bet that when you're in the real exam, you will rather break your wrist than to second guess and change an answer.
Right.
And that's the experience that you have to take from the practice exam. Not, damn, I failed, I can't believe it. It's, yo, you would have passed if you didn't go rogue and change 10 answers. You would have blew it out by 8 points.
Right. Right.
So those are the things you have to reframe in your mind is, man, I failed this, but it wasn't me who failed it. It's the second version of myself that doesn't actually think I could pass it. And if I'm going to review the exam questions during the day of my exam, I have to be intentional, deliberate, and disciplined. So if I'm reviewing the question and I don't see anything in the question that tells me to change it, I'm not going to. And that's why a lot of times people say, Phil, should I review and flag questions? What should I do on the day of the exam? My main response, and this is no disrespect to anybody, you have to have the maturity and discipline to be able to do so. And that's not knocking anybody. But if you're finding yourself being anxious and wanting to change everything, that's showing that you don't have the maturity to be able to do that. And that's okay. But you have to be disciplined in the fact of, if I do not see anything in the question, I'm just going to move on. And that takes a lot of strength to be able to go, I don't see anything that I didn't think that I would have seen. I wanted to change the answer, but I'm not changing it. And why aren't I? Because it's like, it was the plan all along to just review it, not change the answer. Because if that's the case, you might as well just go with that answer in general. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does.
So with the time that you have left, and this often happens to a lot of people, you have to double down and remind yourself, I have everything that I need to pass. I don't need anything in additional. I'm not going to go wild. I'm not going to go change a ton of things. I am going to reflect on the questions I got incorrect, understand why I got them correct versus incorrect, and understand what are the strategies and techniques. Not, I need to fixate on a ton of areas. I need to do all these things. I need to make sure that I'm my 100% myself in order to walk into the exam and give 100%. You can do this. You're going to kill this thing as long as you do not second guess yourself. You stay true to your process. You believe that you can pass it, and you add nothing or take nothing away from the questions. Simply stay in it like you're paying rent for a house. You're not going to pay rent and then jump to the neighbor's house to live. It's not where you're supposed to be. Stay inside of your house or the question.
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. And if you need anything in the meantime, just drop me a shout. But you can do this. You can get this done. You just have to stay intentional, deliberate, and focused on what you need to do.
Okay.
Just let me know how it goes. I take my LCSW test in 2 weeks, and I'm super nervous.
I'll share my experience.
How's it going? How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm trying my best. What's cooking? What's cooking?
Okay, so it's been about 3 or 4 years since I took my LMSW, and I got that one on the first try. So I'm just like, I'm hoping I can do this one on the first try again. But it's just, that work-life balance, trying to find the time to study is my biggest thing. And like everyone else has said, it's we feel like we need to remember all of the information and to be able to just recall knowledge. And usually that's not a lot of the questions. A lot of it is situational. But I just have test anxiety really bad anyway. So that's my biggest struggle with it. But I think what my plan is going to be, and this might be some advice for other people, when I took my LMSW 3 or 4 years ago, I had to get up super early that day, which was out of my my plan. It was a circumstance I had to go, a circumstance that happened that, was not the way I planned. But getting up super early, I did review some stuff, which maybe helped, didn't help, I'm not sure. But I ate my favorite comfort food right before taking the test. And I think that really was beneficial. Because I can't take a test on an empty stomach. I won't be able to focus. I won't, I'll be worried about being hungry. And so I think that might be a good piece of advice. I might do that again. But just kind of the nerves,
And what do you think makes you most anxious? Because you went from, all right, it's the amount of content versus I'm not sure if my process is working. Where are you at with that? Because you kind of like switched. I don't know if you realized that or not.
No, I didn't. I don't know. I think I have my own way of studying that I developed in high school. And it really, really helped me. And it got me all the way through college. But it's that method that I created myself is about recall. So it's great for like definitions and theories and things like that. But it's not great for situational questions. And that's most of what the test is.
Okay. So walk me through this. If you're breaking down a scenario-based question, what are some of the thoughts that you have? And what are the things that often lead you to getting correct answers versus incorrect answers?
Well, I know there's the acronym, and what I did when I took my first test was I wrote that down as soon as I got to the testing center, because they gave you paper and pencil, and I just wrote that right down, and I used that, and I think that really helped me a lot.
And when you're writing down the details, are you applying those details back to the question, or are you just writing them down and kind of just doing it based on what you remember?
No, I would write the acronym down. And then when the question was like, what's the first thing you should do? What's the next thing? What's the best? What's the, like those questions, I would look back at that acronym.
So what do you think are the biggest barriers to getting those questions correct then?
I do a lot of second guessing, like everybody else said. So I feel like that's my biggest thing. I always say, like, the answer is there. You just have to figure out which one it is and then still get it wrong.
And what if that pressure that you put on yourself is the reason why you get it incorrect?
It probably is.
And I think the most under-discussed component of passing the exam is the mental aspect of passing the exam.
Yes, I agree.
So an approach that could be additionally like helpful to what you do. So in addition to what you do, that could be helpful is not saying, all right, the answer's on the page, I have to find it. It's okay. There are like instructions that are provided and I have to put it together, but I have to put that dresser together in my own way.
Okay.
Because if you and I were to buy a dresser, I would put that dresser likely together differently than you would. But we're ultimately both going to have a dresser. Would you agree?
Yes.
So I think that's the biggest thing you have to do is I don't take the test the same way that everyone else does, but the identities and things that I've been doing within it are working. Like I'm able to identify who the people are, what's going on, and then I may not get them all correct, and that's okay because I don't have to get 100% on this exam.
Yeah. And another thing that I think really helped me with my LMSW that I wanted to share with everybody was halfway through it, I think I wrote my name out and I just put the initials afterwards. And I kept looking at that and I was like, that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen.
And with you having 2 weeks before your test, do you think that you can pass this?
I do. Just a lot of test anxiety, but yeah, I do.
Okay. And what do you think is stopping you? I know a lot of things are going on, but what do you think if you had to pinpoint it down and say, this is maybe one or maybe the two things that are stopping me? What would you say they are?
probably like just not feeling like I have enough time to study. I feel like I've made time to study, but it's not in my comfort. Like I've spent a few hours every Saturday studying, but I would like to have spent more time than what I have.
Okay. So let's think about the next 2 weeks. If you had to be 100% honest with yourself, how much free time would you say that you have in the next 2 weeks to dedicate to studying?
I definitely have next weekend, and then I took the day before my test off to mentally prepare.
Okay. What about during the week? What does your during the week look like?
By the time I get off of work, I'm just too mentally exhausted. Like I do the questions of the day on like my app, but to actually like sit down and focus is some nights I don't get home till really late, and it's not happening.
What do you do on the drive home?
It's literally like 5 minutes drive, so it's not long.
What could you do in those 5 minutes?
I mean, I know there are podcasts I could listen to.
And I know it may be like, Phil, those are only 5 minutes. What are you talking about? But 5 minutes for over 5 days is a decent amount of time.
Okay.
And I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but 5 minutes over 5 days is 25 minutes more than you would have done if you didn't even do anything in those 5 minutes.
That's true.
And I know a lot of times we have expectations like, man, I hear other people doing this situation, or I feel people are doing that, or man, I need to be doing all of these things. But it's like, not everybody has the same situation or opportunities to be able to do it. But being able to maximize the time that you have is going to be important, because and I'm not telling you to utilize the 5 minutes, but if I were in your situation, I would, and it will give you some clarity mentally that's like, I'm still contributing to this process. Maybe not as much as I want to, but I'm giving everything I have, because that's the only amount of time that I could dedicate before I have to get home and do a lot of other stuff, and I'm exhausted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's where you look at it and say, I've put in 25 minutes in this 5 days. I can hammer it all the way home on Saturday if I need to, or on Sunday if I need to.
Okay.
And that way you can build it up. But I would recommend focusing on, in those 5 minutes or on the Saturday and potentially Sunday, whatever you got, on the vulnerable areas that you're like, yikes, I don't feel comfortable with this. So that way you don't feel like, man, I didn't get the time to dedicate to these. It's, okay, this is what I particularly need to do, and this is the only amount of time I have, and I have to put blinders on, because I know there are people that are putting hours and hours and hours into this, but life didn't give me that hand, and I have to hand myself what I have.
Yeah.
So those are the things you have to focus on, are what can I do and what is in my control. I can't stop myself from being physically or emotionally exhausted because I had a hard day. But even if I don't retain any of that information in that 5 minutes or X amount of time, I at least have some recollection of it somewhere. Somewhere. And giving yourself credit. I think that's the biggest thing too, is I think you're looking like, crap, am I doing the right thing? You have to say, I am doing the 100% right thing because I've designed it specifically for me, and I have to believe it.
Thank you.
It is my pleasure. And if you need anything, drop me a shout. But please, please, please keep doing everything that you need to walk into the exam, and not shoot to get 100%, but shoot to be 100% you throughout 100% of the exam. Hey, Phil, pass back in January using your techniques. I'm open to sharing.
Okay, so I'm like walking from the corner store by my house in Chicago. So first I wanted to say thank you. Oh my God. When I got hold of your videos, it changed my life. And I'm just listening to people on the Zoom meeting right now. And I remember being just like that. I graduated with my master's in 2014. First, let me start with saying that I'm Brian. My name is Brian. I'm an LCSW now. I passed on January 5th. And I'm proud to say that I use Phil techniques, and I've also used my own techniques. I passed on my third attempt. So let me just, I guess, share how So I will start with saying that I got a hold of your videos like a month or two of studying. I told myself I'm gonna study in like 3 months. The first time I took the test, I failed it by like 6 points. And then the second time I took the test, I failed it by like 13 points. I used the development therapist center and my score went down. Like I failed it by more points. And I was so confused because I'm like, oh, I studied for 3 months. I studied every day. Yeah, I did the therapist development center and it went worse. And I think the reason why it went worse is because I was thinking about some of the things that people are saying on the audio right now is about I didn't have no formula. I was just like, I used all the shit my friends sent me. I used things my friends sent me. I used so many different questions and test booklets. So when I got a hold of your videos, I was like, oh shit. I started to prepare myself and think about the mental aspect of the exam. Like, and I say the mental aspect of the exam, first, I stopped drinking coffee. I stopped drinking coffee because the coffee was like messing with my anxiety while I was studying. I went to bed the same time every day. Starting like October, like the first week of October, I started to study again. And I watched one of your videos of you breaking down the questions with your acronym every single day. And I was a little overwhelmed because you had so many videos. I'm like, oh shit, what videos to watch? So I started with going to sleep at the same time every day, watching what television I was watching the music I was listening to. I created a playlist to inspire myself every single day to keep pushing, and a workout plan to just physically, spiritually, mentally to keep at it with the test. So the going to bed every night at the same time made me think about the things that you talked about, like developing a routine. So I had a pen, and when my anxiety would go drive me crazy, I would shake the pen in between my fingers to like combat my anxiety, and that helped me during my studying. I listened to every episode on your podcast. I listened to it cooking. I listened to it running. I listened to it walking. I listened to it every day. I don't know if I can curse on this, but I listened to it every damn day until I got to every episode. And so I didn't watch all the hour long the study thing that you had. They were just too long. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just watch the acronym videos, and then I'm gonna develop my own routine. So I just want to tell people this because I saw people in the chat talking about the practice questions. I literally only use the practice test to test myself, like to test my routine. And when you talked about that, you need to practice and build the muscle for your routine. So every time I study, I shook my hand with a pen, and that helped me. I didn't let it break my confidence in a way. I failed. How about listen to this and listen to this very carefully. Careful. I failed every practice test I took except the real test and the test on the ASWB website. So how about that? I failed every test, literally every test I took. I took 6 to 7 practice tests, and I only took them every Friday because I wanted to study for like a week or two, then take a practice test on a Friday. I failed them all. I didn't fail the practice test the Friday, 3 days before my exam. My exam was on a Tuesday, and that was the only practice test I didn't fail. And I say that because like I had to really really get in my mind. Like it was a mind thing. I had to tell myself that I can do this. I listened to jazz music with no words every night the week of my exam. I think that it's a lot, and you got to break down the exam in like smaller parts in your preparation into smaller parts. I had the Agar book. I threw everything away. I did not use pocket prep, but at least that didn't work for me. And I catered to the way I learned. I watched field videos. I wrote that damn acronym down everywhere on every piece of paper I had. And then I told myself that I'm like, I know I can do this. And I prayed. I prayed before the exam. I prayed after the exam. So it was like, I was like a stepping tool for myself. The good thing about listening to the podcast, it helps you develop. At every episode, you get a new tool. I remember you had an episode when a young lady said that she failed like 6 or 7 times and she finally passed on 7th time. And it was so inspiring. I'm like, and she said she had to stop saying studying. So, because study would give her anxiety. The word study gave me anxiety like my 6th or 7th week into studying. So I would tell family I'm reviewing things. I created a note in my notes in my phone that anytime somebody called me when I was studying, I would copy and paste it and message them like, hey, I don't have time to talk right now. I'm studying or I'm reviewing my things. So I had to like really like put my time into studying more. So and I'm very gritty. So I still have my printouts when I failed, and I kept them to motivate me because I knew one day I was going to pass this damn exam. So like 2 weeks into the exam, I like literally listened to jazz music. I listened to jazz music and I didn't know one person on your podcast said that they listened to opera music, I think, on the way to the test. So I listened to jazz music on my way to the test. And I went to the testing site 2 to 3 days before I took my test because I wanted to get a feel for the place. And guess what? The day of the test exam, the lady let me start my test early, but I didn't start it early. She was giving me basically an hour early, and I didn't start it because I wanted to review the law and ethics, the code of ethics. So I really thought I was like good with the code of ethics, but I want people to really understand. You have to know what you're reading. Like you really have to know what you're reading and like comprehend what you're reading. The entire time I studied, I think I read the code of ethics like 60 times, at least about 40 times. Like I've read it front and back, and I really wanted to understand. And the things that confused me, I wrote it down. Like Phil, you had questions about like you on your questions when you break things down, you'll say, in some states the kid could be 17 or 16 and minor in assent versus assent. Like I literally wrote these things down because on the test it's so tricky. Like you really have to like really understand like the little loopholes that they can try to get you. But you do know the information. I have to remind myself like I do know this information. And doing the exam, I would never forget. So when I got to the exam, I did my routine. I've been practicing this for months, a couple months, shaking the pen, praying. I wrote the notes. I did exactly what you did. I wrote the acronym on it, and then I said faith over fear. I did a big F and a greater than a lower F. And me and my friends, me and one of my accountability partners for studying, we both took our exams and we passed recently. And I said faith over fear. My first question was hard as hell on the exam. I will never forget. I stuck at the same question for like 10 minutes trying to figure out, and it almost threw me for a loop. So I had to tell myself faith over fear. Like I provided myself for affirmations. I kept telling myself, I trust myself. I trust my answers. I prepared for this, and I practiced my routine. I know my routine, and that routine got me back. Each question is like a different question. Like, and I say a different question because it really makes you think about like, I had to ask myself, like, this was the only thing that I developed on my own outside of using Phil. I used the acronym to guide me, but every time I read a question, I thought about what kind of social worker this is. What is the limitations to the setting? What I can and cannot do in this setting. So like, if it was a school of social worker, if it was a medical social worker, if it was a social worker for criminal justice system, like I had to really think about like, what is really happening? Am I in the session? Am I in a session right now with a client? What am I doing? Am I in a nonprofit? Like I had to really think about those different things to really gauge the type of answer. When I was doing my practice test, I realized it was always that the two questions, the two options, and it would be the one, I'll always pick the one that was wrong. And then the one that I thought was the right answer would be the right answer. So it helped me get over that. I had to write down. I had to write down and say, if something in that answer is wrong, it's wrong. And I say that because you can see two answers, and it can be like there can be so profound and they're so similar. But if it has a statement in it that is wrong, that is wrong, that you can prove something that's in that statement is wrong, it's wrong. And that pushed me through the exams. On my exam, I needed to get 102 right. I got 114 right. And it was just using field acronym, using my own, style of like looking at each question as its own separate question and not adding things to the exam. Like I want y'all to know, like, y'all really can do this. And the fact that you're on a podcast and the fact that you're not giving up, no matter how many times you haven't passed, you can really pass. Like, I see my name and I see LCSW by my name. And I remember, working in different nonprofits and working in different settings and thinking like this is this untouchable thing. You graduated with your master's. You went to college. You got graduated with your undergrad. You balance all these different life things. Like, you can do it. You have the time. You make the time, and you can really do it. It's really changing your mental. So if you're afraid, be afraid, but understand that whatever faith that you have, like whatever higher power you believe in, will give you the strength. I still had anxiety. The last question, I walked out the room and I prayed and I told myself, and it makes me cry, because I wrote a letter to myself if I passed or failed. And the letter was me accepting myself for whatever happens in that moment. And I went in and I pressed the last thing and I passed. And I was shaking. I was like so excited. And I'm still having like this, I still have moments where I'm like, I didn't give up. I really worked hard to really get it. You have, so many different, resources out there to help you pass. Find accountability partner. And you have to think for yourself and like figure out what works for you. I knew coffee was giving me anxiety. I took a melatonin every night. I went to bed at the same time. I did the same thing. I limited my time on social media. I limited my time contacting with friends and family and trying to be on the phone for so long. When people called me, I'd say, hey, I have 5 minutes. And I studied, and I catered to the way I study. I like to read. I like to talk about different things. I like to like make bullet points to retain the information. And recall don't really help you on this exam. You have to really comprehend the information. Like, when I say comprehend, meaning that I can explain what confidentiality is to a 5-year-old. That's what I mean. Like, you have to be able to explain these concepts to anyone. The fact that if you took it more than, a few times, you are at an advantage because you know the information. I didn't really look at DSM stuff until the day of the test. I grabbed the DSM and I just skimmed through it. I made sure that I knew the differentials, meaning like the symptomology of like what's the difference between brief psychotic disorder versus schizophrenia, the time frame in which symptoms should be present. And I had a few diagnosis questions on the test, and I got them all right because it was fresh in my mind. And I didn't really like the other times I studied, I didn't like I remember just reading information and writing bipolar on note cards and like writing all the information. It's brief. You guys, this information. I had to tell myself, like, I know this stuff. So I skimmed through the book just to know the differentials, and every diagnosis question on that test, I know for sure I got right. And some were a little tricky, but I knew the differentials. I knew the time frame in which symptomology needed to be present. I also knew that when you get questions that are so difficult, the least restrictive environment is the one of the safest answers. So cut out all the myths you hear about the test. There is no myths. You really know this information. You know how to do it. You know it. You just have to figure out how to study in a way that you can combat your anxiety and you can keep your mind clear in the space in that testing center and do it. And you have to really stay positive. You have to talk to yourself nice. You have to treat yourself nice. Eat certain things, sleep a certain time, work out. You have to really do your body well for your mind and to work for you. That's really all I have to say. I just wanted to say thank you again, Phil, and just believe in yourself. Like, you really can do it. You know this stuff. You do it every day. You know this stuff. You know this information. Don't ever give up. Keep staying at it. You're going to be afraid. You're going to have fear, but still do it. I was terrified when I walked into the exam, but I knew I was going to pass. I can't tell you how many times I cried. I still kind of cry because I've been like, I can listen to songs that I listen to keep me motivated. I'm like, whoa, I was listening to this song every day for 3 months to keep me believing and having hope and things like that. But you can really do it. Just figure out like the best way that you can learn the information and get that fire in you. Get that fire in you. I literally still have my failed. I never threw them away because it's just powerful at like, I really did it, and I'm still having like these moments. So I just took my first job offer as an LCSW here in Chicago. I'm in a group practice, and I'm making the most money I've ever made, and I'm still having moments like, whoa, having out of body experiences like, whoa, I really did this. You worked so hard to get to that point, but all the nights you studied in college, like, figure it out. You have the formula. I say, listen to Phil podcast, listen to how he break down the questions. And when you break down the questions, really understand what is in the things that is happening in the question, like what is the setting? Like, what is the setting? What is the social worker doing? What the social worker can and cannot do? Like, really look at the question and try to really understand what you're reading. And I think that that's the thing, because we try to apply stuff to it and apply our real life practice stuff to a test, but the test is extremely black and white. And I realized that I'm Black, as you all may know. I was really biased towards this test. I went to a therapist to talk about my different biases, how I felt being a minority taking this exam. I had a lot of resentments towards this test, and I failed in 2016. I failed in 2018. And January 5th of this year, I passed it. So find that fire, stick to it, a routine, figure out, like, you got to really figure out what works for you. And when I found what worked for me, and Phil definitely worked for me. Thank you, Phil. We value what you do. Man, I just really appreciate you. And I'm so glad that you did your videos. Don't ever stop doing what you're doing. You're really changing people's lives, man. And you're changing people's lives to the point that I'm literally starting. I want to do what you do. I want to help people pass this exam and get out here in the field and really change people's lives. So I'm gonna listen in. I guess Phil, you have my email. You can share my email if people are looking to ask some questions or something like that. But just figure out really what works for you. You really can do it. Phil is amazing. We value you, Phil. We love you, man. And just want to say thank you so much for doing your videos and your podcast, because you really you changed my life, man. So I want to show y'all something. Here's my license. That's all I have to say. You can do it too. I framed it. You can do it too.
It's my pleasure to be able to help. I really, really appreciate you coming back and sharing your experience, because I can be as motivated as I want to be, or share all the knowledge that I have. But it's always great to have people come back and say, like, yo, this stuff works.
It really did.
Like, this is real. Like, this is like me not believing that I could do it after trusting a program. Now I'm in a private practice making more than I ever thought. And now it's like a new life. You know what I mean? So from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you coming back and sharing your experience, because I know it motivated me. And I know a lot of people are like, man, I could see myself being in those shoes. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome, man. You can do it. What is that saying about, like, oh my God, I can't, I'm having a brain fart, but just, I really want people to know that, like, really treat yourselves well. Like, I'm really so serious. Like, really treat yourself well. Talk to yourself nice, and do things you don't normally do. Like go to a chiropractor, get a massage. Like you got to really treat yourself well to prepare yourself, because the test is only 4 hours. Like it's not really that big of a deal, and you can really do it. Phil, one last thing. I was going so fast using your acronym that I had like an hour and some change left, and it was like 40 some questions left. I'm like, let me slow down. I think I'm feeling myself too much. And I slowed down and I answered the questions the last, like the last hour, like taking my time, because I was like almost done in like less than 3 hours. But you can do it. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Phil.
It's my pleasure. Failed 4 times and need to understand more about the type of questions it is asking, I believe. Very frustrating, but failing was only by 4 points.
Thank you, Phil. So far, everything's been very encouraging that I've been hearing. I do know, like many people, that anxiety comes. I've always had that. I'm one of those people that I want to know if I got the answer right as soon as I answer the question. And so that takes my mind to kind of wondering at the end of the test, did I get it right? Did I get it right? And I'm the cart before the horse kind of thing. So I have to remind myself to pace myself, stay in the moment, answer this question, then answer the next question. So that's always been a thing for me. I know I overanalyze these questions as well, because even in the practice questions, I'll do it. It's just a natural thing that I do, and I have to slow myself down with that as well. And second guessing myself, I'll read it, start eliminating, 2 answers, and then I'll go back and I'll start analyzing it again, saying, oh no, I think it's this one because of this, and talk myself right into the wrong answer. I have done that so many times, even with the practice test. And when I started doing another study group that I just stumbled upon, they were breaking the question down to letting you know if it was an ethical question, application, or what type of question. And I found that I was not really able to identify them as good as I thought I was. So I'm thinking that could also be part of the problem, that I'm just not answering it based on the type of question it is. So I'm not sure what kind of advice you could give with that part, or a direction to go in how to, because I have used your acronyms as well, which is very good. It helps me to break the question down, but also just knowing if I'm answering an ethical question, then I know I'm going to be approaching it differently, opposed to if it's an application question or something like the recall question. But this is my 5th time going into it. It's already been scheduled, so I'm not going to give up on it. It can definitely be frustrating, because 2 of those times that I took it, I just knew that I passed it. I was like so bummed when I saw fail that I was like, you're kidding me. But it was what it was.
So let me ask you this, because a lot of what you're like uncertain about is, man, I don't really know how to identify the types of questions that exist when you're breaking it down. So let me ask you this. Do you think it's important to know the type of question that it is prior to answering it? Or is that unhelpful for you and actually causes you to second guess and overthink?
I would say probably not before I answer no, I would say yes. No, I'd have to say yes. I think it's better for me to probably know, because then my mind will go in a different direction if I do not know. If I know after I read this question, oh, this is an ethical question, then I'm going to be in that realm, opposed to trying to analyze and break down the answers and the question.
Okay. So at what point are you trying to identify the type of question that it is?
In the beginning, I was only trying to identify it after I started looking at the answers. Then when I realized, okay, this is the 4th time I haven't passed this, so I started practicing, and I changed it to where I read the question and I start breaking the question down. And before I start answering it, I want to know, I think it's probably better for me to know what type of question.
So what makes you want to change your process?
Because when I started doing some study group, I think it was Dr. Sapphire, and I was working with some of the questions, my answer was incorrect on a few of them. And then when they did the breakdown, I quickly understood why it was wrong. but that was after they identified the type of question it was. And then I would have chosen a different answer if I had that mindset that this was actually this type of question. I took the question in a different direction. So that's what made me think maybe if I know that the next time around, I'll have a better success with processing the question.
Okay. So from the sounds of it, reading the question, reading the answer choices, and then going back to the question and saying what type of question this is the process that you're thinking could be more helpful.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the biggest thing is reminding yourself that you were close. And if you make too many changes, you're going to spin yourself away from fighting your previous process with your current new introduced process.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
changes
no.
aren't always bad. But from my experience, if people start mixing too many styles or too many strategies and techniques, they often cause themselves to be less favorable in the result because they're battling who they once were and are making changes to things that may not actually have the biggest impact on their answering process.
I agree. And I don't want to make a whole bunch of changes because I know for me that I'll be total shutdown. So, but I did find that when I stumbled upon that study group, that the light bulb did kind of go off where I'm like, okay, I see clearly now why I had it wrong. So if I have that would be an extra plus for me, which made it much more desirable to pick up and study again because I had gotten to the place where I'm like, I'm not sure what's going on. The same areas are the same areas on all four of those tests I got wrong, or the numbers were the same. Maybe one or two was up or down. So it's not that I don't know the information. So I do get that piece. It's a matter of tweaking in some areas here. And so I know I don't want to throw the whole study program that I had out of the door. And I want to just add this piece in it because the light bulb, like I said, it did just kind of go off. I'm like, okay, I would have answered it actually accurately if I had known mentally this is the type of question I was answering, because I would have chosen that same answer they just gave me. But the reason I didn't is because I was thinking of it with a different mindset. So that little piece may add, I believe will add to it to be successful the next time.
Okay. So one of the biggest things, and I'm not pushing back on you to making this change, but the biggest thing is I would answer every single question the same way.
Okay.
And I know you're like, well, Phil, what are you just talking about? You said not to compare questions ever, which is 100% true. But what I mean is if you are wanting to jump to answers faster on certain questions, but taking your time on other questions, it's going to create a situation of like, if I mislabel this on accident, I'm either jumping too quick or taking longer, and I'm not sure which process I need to do. So I would say being consistent of how you break it down every time is more important than being able to differentiate the type of questions in order to unlock how you break it down.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah.
And I only say that because I don't want you to be like, all right, this is an ethics question, so I'm going to go faster because I know my ethics better. And then it cause you to spin out and not pick the answer that you think it is because you went faster than you did on another question that you got correct.
Right.
So teetering with it like an experiment of, if I implement this on this 5 set of questions, what is it like for me? How did it feel for me? What were the results of that? Versus if I do this other strategy and technique of maybe not identifying it prior, did I do better on these set of questions? And I know 5 isn't a lot, but your feeling of executing it is more important of what the result of executing it is.
I agree. Yeah. Thank you.
And also giving yourself credit for being able to show up for the 5th time and ready for war. I think that's a huge thing you got to do is I'm willing to show up for the 5th time and I'm still excited.
Yeah. Because it's taken its toll. It had taken its toll, but the purpose is still there. The goal is still there. So it's just a matter of, I had that moment of my meltdown. I'm like, okay, moving on to the next one. And so we're back at it, and it's going to be in May that I take it. So we're gonna do it.
You can do this. Just making sure that you stay consistent, stay intentional, stay deliberate, and you'll get the result that you want.
Yep. And thank you for all of your podcasts because they do help.
It's my pleasure to be able to help. And if I can help in any other way, just let me know.
Thank you.
Yep. Take care and be safe.
Yes, you too.
I'm testing next week. I'm here hoping to gain more info to get me to the finish line.
Hi, Phil. My name's Micah. I'm actually a current MSW student. I'm graduating in May. And to get to where I want to go professionally, which is to be a school social worker, I've got to have my license. And in Kansas, most of our positions come open in March and April. So that's why I'm testing a little bit early. Right now, I feel like I've studied content and more content. And so right now I'm really focusing on how to break questions down and how to, I'm looking at the rationales on the ones that I may not have gotten correct. So I'm just curious to know at this point, if you have any extra tips you would want me to consider being just a few days out from taking the test, what you would do at this time.
Yeah. So if I was a couple of days out of the exam, my biggest thing, like you said, I'm now refining my process. I would identify what are some sticking points, what are things that I need to like mitigate or be aware of, or what are the tendencies that often lead you to pick particular answers, and also keeping it together, because way too often I see people getting ready to take the exam and they let the heat of the moment take them outside of the exam. And then when they leave the exam, say, why in the heck did I do half of the things that I did in there? So I think mapping it out and understanding what in particular your style is and what are the things that you need to do to supplement and that align with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I do think I am trying to do that. I think one of my biggest challenges personally is going too fast through questions and missing something that may have been important, that was important in the STEM. And that I can narrow it down usually to 2, and then I pick the wrong answer because I've missed something. So I did take the ASWB practice exam and I did pass that. I felt good about that. That was really helpful for me just in understanding the exam process. So I'm glad I did that for that reason. But still it's, I've kind of gone into this exam thinking I'm going to take this one time. And that's sort of been my mindset is I'm going to take this one time. I don't want to have that mindset of I'm going to take this, but if I fail it, it's okay. For me, that's putting doubt into my head immediately. And I don't want to do that to myself. So again, I'm just trying to focus on rationales, how to break down the questions, and just going into it with the mindset of that I'm going to pass it.
So when it comes to going too fast, what you need to do is making sure that you have a consistent process in order to get that done. And what I mean by that is if you're like, well, I only read it one time and then jump to the answers, but never go back to the question, you almost need to go back to the question to connect your answer back to it. So if I had a Phil starter pack, the way that I tell people to break down the question is to read the question one time, break down the question, to pick out the key details, then compare the answer that you think it is, or the 2 or 3 answers that you think it are, back to the question to make sure that you have a thorough backing. And that's not like, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? This is way slower. Because if time's not an issue for you, you giving a second look is going to be better than if you rip it right off the hip and then have doubt later on in the exam. So there's a term that I often throw out that is different than second guessing, because second guessing is like the cardinal sin. Second checking, on the other hand, is where you're going to check back an additional time in order to make sure that your answer and the question align back with one another. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes complete sense. So just in studying the questions I've been going over and over recently, I've been kind of forcing myself to read the question 2 times through. That way, if I miss something, I'm hoping to pick it up on the second time through and then narrow down my choices a little bit better.
Good. And you asking these questions nonetheless shows that you're in a better position, because you're not wondering, how can I improve? It's, I'm afraid that I'm not going to do what I said I was going to do. and then cause myself to fail.
Yes. So yeah, I agree.
And also having fun. I feel like way too often when people walk into the exam, it's like they're getting ready to like go through the worst movie that you could imagine, but having that excitement of I put everything on the line for this and now I'm here. Like it's okay to be excited. It's okay to put all this stuff aside and just embrace what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, and I think I'm at that point. And I feel like for me, a little bit of nervous energy is good for me. Because I think I think it helps me it helps me do a little bit better just to have a little bit of nervous energy.
Good. And just giving yourself that leeway of, I'm not entertaining the fact that I'm going to fail, but it's okay to have some doubts because that doubt is equated to me caring about my experience rather than just wavering in the wind. It's okay to be doubtful, but I'm not going to let it weigh me down, but I have to know that its existence is required in order for me to pass.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And if you need anything, just let me know, but just let me know how your exam goes.
Thanks.